think that the tennis players would take a week off, but they won't. And if you think that, then normally as fans you take a week off. Something like Wimbledon, after you've got a big tournament of any kind, you probably mentally are quite exhausted as a fan of watching a specific sport because, you've gone through all the emotions, especially if you've supported a player all the way through. I can imagine a Djokovic fan has pretty much been through it over the last couple of weeks.
The more tournaments there are, the less significance they have, basically, because that's why the slams are so important. It's not only because there's a different format and the history and all that, it's because there's literally only 4 of them per year.
It's not just about how much money they can gain from a match, for example, if they win or even if they take part, but it's also about how much money they have to get to that match and get to that tournament. And like I say, it's a world tour, the ATP, and if you have them in specific locations, that's great if you live in those locations. If you don't live in those locations, I think some players are going to struggle.
Welcome back to the GAG Podcast on another scorcher of a day. I think railway tracks are melting, brains are definitely melting, and everything's sort of just going to pot, really, I think. I mean, that's the UK.
Well, everyone else, a lot of people.
Everyone else is fine. It's just the UK, which is just a joke. But yeah,
the UK can't handle the heat, and they say that that's because of the infrastructure. But I think it's mostly because we haven't paid for it and haven't gotten on a weird flight to get to it. That we don't think it's natural. Whereas most people, about this time of the year, have probably paid a few £100 for this sort of weather. So I don't understand why anyone's complaining.
Yeah. Well, talking of infrastructure, I think they need to improve the infrastructure at the Newport Open. Judging by the highlights I've been watching, the fact that I can barely see the ball. We thought the camera was bad at that Stuttgart Open, which you said was like a security camera. I think this one's probably more like a webcam from like the mid-noughties or something, because honestly, it's just I can barely see the ball. But anyway, yeah. So we got the Newport Open that's just finished. Cressy coming out on top. Came from a set and I think 3-love down or something. So, but it was on grass, so obviously that is like his favoured surface. And then over in Sweden we had a clay court tournament going on. So we've got a clay court tournament going on and a grass court tournament going on when the next major is a hard court. But anyway, and Corundolo won that one against Baez. Baez always seems to be there or thereabouts. He reminds me a bit of like Schwartzman. He's just like a hard battling, like shortish guy who can move ridiculously well. It's almost like impossible to hit through them. They just get everything back. So yeah, like you said, he'll probably be around for quite a while.
Call them the Duracell bunnies.
One of the Duracell bunnies. But yeah, I haven't really been following it massively this week because I thought maybe we could just take a week off after Wimbledon, but apparently that's not a thing. So
well, this is it. You'd think that the tennis players would take a week off, but they won't. And if you think that, then normally as fans you take a week off. Something like Wimbledon, after you've got a big tournament of any kind, you probably mentally are quite exhausted as a fan of watching a specific sport because, you've gone through all the emotions, especially if you've supported a player all the way through. I can imagine a Djokovic fan has pretty much been through it over the last couple of weeks at Wimbledon. So, a week like this, obviously he's not playing, etc. But, a week like this, you want to sort of rest your brain off of tennis because it does take a little bit too much. A little bit too much to watch someone keep dropping sets and then going away and winning the match consistently.
Yeah, well, I suppose the counter argument would be these guys, a lot of them probably didn't get to the second week of Wimbledon, so maybe they had a week off or 5
maybe they
days
had
off
their
or something.
time off.
And
exactly.
Now it's like, none of the big players are playing, so here's my chance. I suppose you can't really knock them for that. If there's a tournament going on, then you're going to enter it, aren't you? But it's just
both tournaments get about $500,000 tournament prize money if you win it, so it's worth it.
Yeah, I still think, the schedule's still ridiculous, isn't it? As we said before, it's like if the money's there and like people are going to watch it, then there's all these tournaments are going to happen, aren't they? And it's just like, well, these sort of lower ranked players, although they're still fairly high up in the world, are going to take the opportunity if they've got it, more match practice, more money. Why not?
Yeah, I don't really know if it's a good thing. Personally, I'm all for a bit more of a reduced tour. I feel the same about pretty much all sport. I'd be a bit more a fan of reduced sort of schedules in everything that I watch. Tennis isn't the only thing that I'm interested in. Of course, it's the thing I'm interested the most in, but yeah, like football, for example, that's just insane. And with the World Cup this season, that's going to be a joke. It's exactly the same when it comes to tennis. Like we've got these new elements as well, like the ATP Cup, and we've got sort of Europe versus America and all of that sort of, or Europe
Labour
versus the
Cup.
rest of the world, should I
Yeah.
say? The Labour Cup, exactly. I I love these events. Don't get me wrong. I think they're great. And I think it's exactly what tennis needs as well. But at the same time, I think some of these 250 events. Why do we need them to be there? Or literally a week after Wimbledon, for example, which is already a brutal schedule. They've come off the French Open, had what 3 weeks to a month, and gone straight into a grass court tournament, which changes surface is enough to break anyone's body, let alone a professional athlete who's playing every day. So yeah, I think a lot more thought needs to be given to it.
Yeah, like you said, it's the same in a lot of other sports. I know even with like cricket, they've created another tournament, like another shorter format tournament to kind of try and bring in a different crowd. But then like the England team are literally going from like one series into the next like 2 days apart, and it's like you have guys pulling out of one of the formats because they can't play all of them. It's literally impossible. And like this is the same for like these top players in tennis now. Djokovic said, I can just pick and choose like which tournaments I play now. Obviously, it's easier for them because they have more money as well, but they're almost being forced into that because it's just impossible to play these many tournaments per year.
I think that is potentially the hinge point here where the argument needs to be taken. So if you were to ask me, it's not that we need to have fewer tournaments, it's that we need to put less pressure on how players achieve ranking points for sort of world number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Because again, when you look at these tournaments, say the two 250 events that are currently happening at the moment, they've both got prize money of 500,000 if you win in the final. Okay, that's serious money to someone. Well, that's to anyone, even if you're Novak Djokovic, for example. But even in the lower end of the tournament, well, and I've mentioned this before, especially with Wimbledon and the idea of withdrawals and stuff. Even at the lower end of that tournament, if you win a match, that's potentially career extending money that takes you from week to a couple more weeks. It buys you a little more time to see if this is something that's still you can still compete on the tour and you can still actually make a living out of it. It's not worth it if you can't actually make a living out of it, no matter how much you love it. So like I say, these tournaments need to exist because we need to give these lower end players the opportunity to then, show their quality, show the entertainment standard that they have, whilst also being able to make money out of it. But at the same time, when you've got players scrambling and hurting themselves to exhaust themselves on a tour that, prizes basically playing the most matches possible, then it gets a little bit ridiculous. You can't watch your favourite player if he's injured or she's injured.
Yeah, it's whether you kind of reduce some of the number of these smaller tournaments and then, I don't know, maybe make another like a Masters event or something where you have like a week or half a week of like qualifiers beforehand, and it's more of a major event, and maybe like you increase some of the money for, I don't know, some of the later qualifying rounds or something. Because I don't know, it's a tricky one because the more tournaments there are, like the less significance they have, basically. Because that's why the slams are so important. It's not only because there's a different format and the history and all that. It's because there's literally only 4 of them per year, and obviously they have more ranking points as well because of that. It's like finding this balance, and also more and more tennis players are thinking they can make a career. So like you feel like a need to support more players to have a career in tennis, and then it's like how is the funding distributed from like people who aren't playing tennis but are running the events and all that sort of stuff. Like all this factors in. I think It just
These are good points. I think I would be concerned about, again, as I say, I'd be concerned about losing some of the existing tournaments. I think there is an argument to say that we could have more tournaments. The argument against that would be that you're taking, say you had them on the same week as current ones, then you're basically making it incapable for some players to choose which one that they're actually going to go to. Tournaments then get fewer big names, and then that's fewer people that you want to see, and therefore, spectators aren't as keen. That's one argument there. But if you go on the other side of it, again, like the more tournaments you run, the more opportunities you give to more players. And we've also got to remember that, it's not just about how much money they can gain from a match, for example, if they win, or even if they take part, but it's also about how much money they have to get to that match and get to that tournament. And, like I say, it's a world tour, the ATP. And if you have them in specific locations, that's great if you live in those locations. If you don't live in those locations, I think some players are going to struggle. And that's one of the things, like, grassroots tennis, it extends all the way from basically anyone outside the top 200, I would say, right the way down to, just having a knock on a court on a Sunday afternoon. And I don't think people always appreciate that as fans when they're watching tennis.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Just let us know in the comments if you've got what your thoughts are on the scheduling and whether there are too many tournaments, how we can alter the schedule without kind of harming opportunities. It's a difficult one, isn't it? With more and more money coming into sport as an entertainment product, not just in tennis, but all the other sports. It's only becoming more and more packed, and it's have we gone too far that way now? Let us know what you think about that. All right, another edition of Tennis Trivia is upon us. My turn again. Merlin lost his 100% record last week. I will be looking to get 4. I think that'll be my target, realistically.
You'll be looking to get 4. You want to get over that 3 out of 5 mark, exactly. And I tell you what, this week might be your week.
Don't say that.
We have got another tennis trivia. I know, but it could very well be your week. I think these are some of the nicest questions I've ever put together. And there's some short, punchier answers to them. And we've even discussed some of it earlier today, some of the things that it covers. So I'll crack straight on. Question number 1. The Hall of Fame Open is currently held in Newport. Now, I'm not going to ask you where Newport is because some people do actually get this wrong quite a lot. There are lots of places in the world called Newport. But what I want to know is which tournament was this previously the location for? So apart from the Hall of Fame Open, what tournament was held on the same area in Newport up until the Hall of Fame Open was conceived? And your 4 options are Wimbledon, the US Open, the Western and Southern Open, or the ATP Tour World Tour Finals.
Oh, I think I actually looked this up before, just by a complete coincidence. I was like, why is it called Hall of Fame Open? And then I found something about, they said that it hosted the US Open before. So I'll go with the US Open, and if it's wrong, then it's Wikipedia's fault.
You are correct. Well done. That's 1 out of 5 already. Yes, it was the US Open. It was originally held in Newport. In fact, the Newport Casino Court was actually the first court that, and this was grass back in the days when the US Open was grass. This was actually the first place it was ever held. I believe it was 1881. I think that was the first year for the US Open. I know it was the 1880s at the very least. But yes, Newport was originally the US Open before it moved eventually to Flushing Meadows. And interestingly as well, it's obviously still a grass tournament. So the location, obviously all the infrastructure that was there once upon a time for the US Open was then turned into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Hence the name, Hall of Fame Open, being at the same place. Which to me sort of makes it sound like a budget open. Doesn't make me feel like it's actually a tennis open,
It's a bit of a weird name for a tournament, that, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll leave that to everyone's personal opinion. So, question number 2. That's a good start. What I want to know is what surface is the Hall of Fame Open played on? And your answers possibly here are grass, clay, hard court, and marble. So what do you reckon?
That would be interesting.
Given that I may have already given you the answer as I was talking about the Hall of Fame Open, what surface is the Hall of Fame Open played on, Ben?
I mean, it'd be interesting if it was marble. That could take sliding to a new level with any bit of moisture on the bottom of your shoe. I'm glad you told me what surface it was, because from the camera, I don't think I could tell what surface it was, to be honest. I will go with grass.
Yes, it is indeed grass. Yes, it is oddly a grass court tournament played after Wimbledon. But yes, it was the grass court tournament at the Hall of Fame Open. Yeah, unfortunately, I did give you the answer before, but I think you knew the answer anyway. Just like I think you'll pretty much know the next answer. At the same time as the Hall of Fame Open, another ATP Tour 250 event is being played. This is called the Bastad Open, also known as the Nordea Open, played in Sweden. What I want to know is what surface is this tournament played on? Bear in mind, it is a week after Wimbledon. You have 4 options. It is either grass, acrylic, clay, or AstroTurf.
Oh, disappointed that marble wasn't an option this time.
No, I'll give you a secret gift option of marble if you'd like.
This was played on sawdust.
Right. Soap.
With no shoes allowed. That would be quite interesting, actually. Do like a slip and slide tennis match or something. I think that would make for good viewing.
I feel like a waste of water though. Although in this sort of heat, necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad this could have exposed me for not watching any of the tennis this week, so I'm glad that I did. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it is clay, I believe.
It is indeed clay. You're off a flying victory so far. You've got 3 out of 3. All you need is one more question, and out of the next 2, and I reckon you are off to a winner and one of your record weeks. Yes, the Bastad Open is played on clay. I may be butchering the pronunciation of it, but who cares? I like the way it sounds. So on to question 4. What I want to know is, now that Wimbledon's over and we've got this little period of rest, we say rest, but obviously the schedule is still quite packed. We've got this period before the next Grand Slam, which is the US Open. Now, the US Open is played later this year and is always the next in the consecutive run of Grand Slams. What I want to know is, how many days are there between the last day of Wimbledon and the first day of the US Open, not including the qualifiers? And your 4 options here are 43, 50, 57, and 60. And I will give you 30 seconds to answer this one, simply because you could just work it out.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, the answers they're fairly close together. We've already had a week. It'll be the end of August. That's 3 weeks, another 4. 7 weeks. 49. What were the options again?
43, 50, 57, and 60.
I'll go with 50.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, I don't know exactly when the US starts, but I know it's like end of August normally. But I don't know where the Monday sits on that. But I'll go with 50.
So the US Open this year starts on the 29th of August, and Wimbledon finished on I believe it was the 10th of July. So that makes it 50 days. Well done. You are correct. You're up to 4 out of 4, 100% so far. We have one more question to go. Obviously, it's interesting to think as well, there aren't actually that many days before the next Grand Slam. You can see there's quite a big gap between, say, the US Open and the Australian Open. Obviously, there's meant to be an actual break in the tour schedule later in the year, but again, that's something more to discuss. So, your final question. Are you feeling confident? What do you reckon, Ben? Do you reckon you can get the 5 out of 5 this week?
I just don't know if you're going to throw me in some curveball question at the end. These have been too easy. I'm almost offended.
Set you up to make you look really good.
Yeah.
So it is another maths question. I know how much that you, the trained maths teacher, loves this sort of thing. What I want to know is how many ATP Tour 250 events are there in a calendar year? And you have 4 options here. Your options are 39, 43, 48, and 52. So what I want to know is how many ATP Tour 250 events are there in a calendar year? Your answers are 39, 43, 48, and 52.
Blimey. Well, I was going to say initially, obviously, well, you've got 52 weeks in a year, but then you do have sometimes 2 tournaments played concurrently, which makes it a little bit more complicated. I'm leaning towards the lower end, but I've got like nothing to go off here. There's no way I can like work this out because I don't know all the tournaments.
You could sort of work it out, but I'll explain all of that after your answer.
There's still but you've got the 7 or 8 Masters ones, or was it 9 even? ATP 500 ones as well. I'm torn between 43 and actually maybe the middle ones. What were the 40 options? 43 and was it 48?
43 and 48 were the middle options. On either side of that is 39 and 52.
Now I'm doubting myself. Now I'm leaning towards the higher end. I'm going to go with 48.
Is that your final answer? Get a grip. He's not done it. Unfortunately, that is incorrect. There are 39 ATP Tour 250 events in a single calendar year as of current. Now, I can see why you went for the upper event. Go on, list them all. List them all. No way. Oh, God, I can give you 2.
Yeah, 2 go on at the moment.
Yeah, the 2 we talked about this week. I'm a researcher. I must research it first.
Yeah.
No, as I was saying, there is only 39 in a year, and you could almost logic it to a sense of thinking it's roughly, maybe at most, half the year in which a 250 could be played, because obviously you've got 500s, 1000s, and then obviously each Grand Slam takes up 2 weeks of the year by itself. So with all of that to consider, there is only 39 different ATP Tour 250 events. But that's not all the events, because obviously there are also challenges as well.
Yes, next week there's an ATP 500 in Hamburg, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's a 250. There is a 250 somewhere else as well, but it escapes me where it is. I mean, they're underway now because it is Monday as we're doing this. Mm-hmm. It never stops. Literally,
it never stops.
Finish one. If you get to like the final or the semis, it's like finish the tournament of the weekend and literally fly to the next place and then have like one day off and then straight back on it again. Mental.
That's the life of a professional tennis player. But if that's your only job, you can see where mentality-wise it's a lot easier to deal with. If you were doing a lot of other things at the same time, then maybe that would completely destroy you.
Yeah. God, if you've got a family as well, it must be pretty difficult. But
yeah,
there we go.
There's that as well.
All right, well, 4 out of 5, I'll take it. Despite even though the one actual tricky question was the one I got wrong, of course. But at least I didn't look like a complete idiot.
No, I was going to say you did all right. You got your first 4 out of 5. I don't know if it is your first 4 out of 5. You may have gotten 4 out of 5 before.
Maybe, not very often. It's a nice confidence boost. And I think now I'm going to go and lie in a cold bath or something because I am rather hot at the moment. I haven't got no fans, no aircon or anything. But anyway, if you have enjoyed this week's podcast, obviously give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, and yeah, like we said before, let us know what your thoughts are on like scheduling and all that sort of thing, how it links into ranking points and opportunities and all that stuff. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.